The word aggregate scares a lot of people, but really it's just basic math. So when people talk about aggregate formulas, all they're talking about are formulas that will count for you. They'll find the sum for you, the average or the median, or maybe the minimum or maximum. And at a core, this is what using spreadsheets is all about, so that way it does all the math for you. So for example, we have all the different count formulas here for Google Sheets. We have all the different sum formulas. You can see that there's regular sum, or there's a lot of them have ifs as well. We have averages, and we have medians. And sometimes the formula exists, sometimes it doesn't, like medianifs, but there's a workaround, so I'll show you how to do that. And finally, you can input different parameters manually, or you can make things dynamic. So I'm going to show you how to build these formulas in a dynamic way so it updates easily. So the first thing we're going to go over is the count formulas. And count sounds exactly like they are. We want to count how many values exist under specific parameters. And the formula for basic count is equals count. And if it's not populated already, you can click on the little blue question mark on the left-hand side and expand to see different details so that will remind you of what you need to do. So after count, all we need is a different range. So you can select different cells and put a comma between them, or you can select the entire range at once, which is most likely what you'll do. But one thing to know about the count formula is it only works for numbers. If there's any text in there, it will not be part of the calculation. So you can see here that I did the amounts, and we have 30 different amounts listed, so it counted 30. Now count A works pretty much the exact same way as count, but instead of having to work only for numbers, it'll work for any type of value. So I can type equals count A, and as you can see here, it shows the number of values, which honestly, this is the one I use more often. I rarely ever use count. But the formatting is the exact same way. So this time I'm going to select all the values in column A under region, and you can see that we have 30 values there as well. Now countif is very similar. The only difference is it's only going to count values if a specific parameter exists. And we call these parameters criteria. So if I type equals countif, open parentheses, you'll see we need the range and then we need the criteria. So I'll go ahead and select all of column A. And the criterion can be anything that's in number form, text, dates, whatever. You just need to list it. And text will always need to be inside quotes. So if I want to use North America, I'll type quote, North America, quote. And once I press enter, you can see that it returns with 7. And that's because North America is listed 7 times in that range. Now instead of typing out the condition each time, all you have to do is select a cell that contains the text that you want to search. And it works the same exact way as if you typed it out. So you can see here, I went ahead and selected one that included North America, and we got 7 just like we did if we typed it out. And if I typed a different name, for example, Europe, you can see that the number changed to 8 because Europe is listed 8 times. Now countifs works pretty much the same exact way as countif. The only difference is that countif can only allow for one condition, whereas countifs can have as many conditions as you want. So you can see here we have range 1, criterion 1, range 2, criterion 2, and so forth. So I'm going to go ahead and select all of column A. Then my criterion is going to be Europe. Then after a comma, I'll select column B, and my criterion will be mid-market. Now, if you get this error message saying it's different size, look at the ranges that you selected. For example, right here, I have this one going from the 7th row, and the other one's going from the 8th row. So those just need to match. So now that they match, a 1 appeared, and that's because it appears one time in this range, where the region is Europe and the company size is mid-market. So that's the count formulas, and now we're going to move on to sum formulas, and they work in a very similar way. You'll just need a different formula. So for example, sum, you type equals sum, and then you just need to select the range that you want to add together, and it will give you the total. And obviously, sum formulas will only be able to work with number formatted values because they have to be able to add. Now, sumif is the same exact concept as countif. You'll be able to sum it if a specific criterion exists. And you can expand the formula to see the different order that it needs to be in. So we'll need the criterion range, the criterion, and then finally the sum range. And the sum range is the numbers that you want to add. So for example, I'll select column A, and that will be our criterion range. Then I'll put Africa in quotes, that's our criterion. And then I'll select the amounts in column D. And once I press enter, you can see that we got 8,200. And that means that there was 8,200 total amounts where Africa was the region. And I can easily format this as currency. Now sumifs works the same exact way. The only difference, just like last time, is you're able to have multiple criterion instead of just one. You also need to pay attention to the formatting. So for example, this sum range will go first instead of last. And this allows you to put as many criterion as you want, but just remember that's the difference. So I'll go ahead and select the amounts in column D, then put a comma, select the region, and this time I'm going to put the condition as North America. And I'm simply going to select the cell instead of typing it out. Then I'll put a comma. The second condition is we want the company size to be enterprise. And you can either type it out inside quotes, or you can select a cell that contains enterprise. And as you can see, we got 5,000, and we can format it as currency by simply clicking on the $, or whatever region you live in. Now I'm sure you're noticing a theme by now. We essentially have the basic version, then one with if and one with ifs for all of these different aggregate formulas, and average is no different. So for the basic average formula, you just type equals average, then select the range you want to average. For average if, you select the criterion range first. So let's say we want to do company size, then we'll put a comma, and then the criterion that we want. In this case, I'm going to say small business. And as you can see, we got a divide by 0 error, and that's because I didn't actually tell it what I want to average. I just told it the condition. So if I go back into the formula and put a comma after the last condition, I can add the range that I want to average. So I'll select all of the amounts and press enter. And now I have the average of all the different amounts that fall under small business. Now averageifs is the same exact thing. And it's the same difference as last time. You need to put the range that you want to average first. So we'll go ahead and select all of the amounts. And then we can start with all of our criterion. So for the first criterion range, I'm going to select the region. Then I'll put a comma and put Asia-Pacific inside quotes for the criterion. Then after a comma, we can put the second criterion range. And this time will be the company size. And we're going to put mid-market inside quotes. Now you can see here that I got a divide by 0 error message. And that's because nothing exists inside those two different criterions that I did. So just because you get an error message doesn't mean that it's wrong. It just might mean that it doesn't exist. So as you can see here, I filtered by the Asia Pacific region, and every single one of them is small business. There is no mid-market. Now if I change this to small business, we'll have the average of all the different small businesses within the Asia Pacific region. So that's the different average formulas. I'm going to unfilter my table just so I have everything nice and neat for next time if I want to use it. And we're going to go to our median formulas. Now, median is essentially the same exact thing as average. The only difference is it takes the median instead of the average. And now median if does not exist in Google Sheets for some reason. I don't know why, but there is a way to do it. So if you were to type in median if, nothing will pop up because it's not there. So this is a little bit advanced. You don't actually need to pay attention to this if you don't want to learn how to do it. But in case you do want to know, let me show you how. So we'll type equals median, open parentheses, if, open parentheses, select the range for the criterion range 1, then put equals the first criterion, then a comma, then you can put the amount that you want to take the median from, and then close the parentheses twice. Now when you press enter, you'll get a value error message, and that's because we're missing one last step, and that's to turn it into an array formula. An array formula just means that it's going to do the calculation based off an entire range instead of a specific cell. So once we wrap that in array formula, you can see that now we have the details that we need. So what this is doing is it's going through every single line in the range that we selected and saying whether it's true or false that the region is equal to Europe. So anything that's not equal to Europe is going to say false. Anything that is equal to Europe is going to say true. And then the array formula is looking at all the trues and finding the median, then returning that amount. Now, as I mentioned, with the different criterion, you can make it where you put each individual criterion in manually, or you can point to a specific cell. So one way to make it dynamic is to point to a cell that contains a dropdown. So for example, if I put sumifs, put the range that I want to sum up, then put the criterion range 1, and then put a comma, then I can select the cell that contains the dropdown for the region. Then I'll put another comma, select the criterion range for the size, and then I'll put a comma and select the dropdown for the size. Now we have a 0 unless we select both criterion. So for example, North America Enterprise, you can see exactly how much that totals. And you can easily toggle between different company sizes in different regions to quickly see how much each of those conditions total. But one big thing with this is if you have one of the conditions missing, then it won't work. So the workaround for this is to go into your formula and before the criterion dropdown, put quote asterisk quote ampersand. And then before the second criterion dropdown, you'll put quote asterisk quote ampersand as well. And this is going to act like a join with a wildcard, which you can see in a different video where I go over the breakdown of different criterion types. But since it's a wildcard, if it's blank, it will show everything that is correlated with the region that is selected. Or you can do a blank for the region and it will show everything related to that company size. And making your formulas dynamic will help make an analysis a lot easier to be able to drill into different data very quickly. Now, you don't always need a formula to do a quick analysis. You can simply select all the amounts. And then in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see some quick aggregates. So you can quickly see the sum, the average, the minimum, maximum, the count, and the count of all the numbers. So it really depends on your use case which one you use. So this should give you a good base understanding of aggregate formulas. Like and comment for more.